Not the shouting, not the anger. What truly breaks control is silence. When you stop reacting, their certainty cracks and your freedom begins. Stay with me for a few minutes and I'll show you how the Stoics use silence as power you can use today. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, "The tranquility that comes from within is not to be sought from without." When you choose silence, you prove that you have touched that inner tranquility. You are no longer moved by their storms. You no longer react on command. And what to you is peace to them becomes a nightmare because the grip they thought they had over you has vanished. They are not frightened when you shout. Shouting reassures them that you still care, that they still have influence. They are not frightened when you argue because argument keeps the game alive. What terrifies them is when you refuse to play at all. In that moment when you remain calm and unshaken, the power leaves their hands completely. Your silence becomes the loudest declaration, "I will not be ruled by you. I will not be defined by you. I belong only to myself." They expect you to fight. They expect you to explain yourself, to argue, to defend your every move. Because every word you speak becomes proof that you are still tied to them, still caught in the web they spun. That is why your reaction, no matter how justified it feels in the moment, only feeds the illusion that they remain in control. When you respond with anger, they smile because they know they have struck a nerve. When you rush to explain, they feel secure because you are still performing for their approval. Every defense, every word, every explanation confirms their power, and in those moments, they win. But what happens when you choose silence? What happens when the noise they create meets a wall of calm that does not move? Suddenly the roles change. The ground beneath them shifts. Silence breaks the illusion of control. It is not weakness. It is mastery. You have taken away their fuel, and without it, their confidence begins to crack. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." That line is not an abstract philosophy carved in stone 2,000 years ago. It is a weapon you can wield right now. Because every moment you hold your silence, you prove that you are not mastered by anyone else, not even by your own impulses. The impulse to lash out, to defend yourself, to seek validation, it whispers, it tempts, it claws at you. But when you rise above it, when you stay composed, you are free. Free from their control and free from your own chains. And make no mistake, silence is not easy. It feels unnatural at first. Our society trains us to react, to justify, to explain. From childhood, we are taught to defend ourselves against every accusation, to prove our worth with words. But the Stoics knew better. They knew that the man who reacts immediately is the man still chained to another's opinion. Seneca wrote in one of his letters, "He who has learned to despise his fears will not be a slave to anyone." And what is silence if not the act of despising the fear of what they think of you? When you fall silent, you force them into a storm of their own imagination. They begin to wonder, why did you not answer? Have you already moved on? Are you planning something greater? Or perhaps have you discovered that you never needed them at all? The truth is they do not know. And it is that not knowing that torments them. People are not afraid of certainty. They can fight certainty. They can argue with words. But uncertainty is an enemy that eats away at their pride in the quiet hours of the night. Think about the moments in history when silence carried more power than armies. Marcus Aurelius, standing at the edge of a battlefield, did not waste his energy on elaborate speeches to his enemies. His presence, calm and unshaken, was enough to command loyalty from his soldiers and fear from those who opposed him. His silence was not absence. It was strength contained, waiting untouchable. That same principle lives in you. When you do not explain, when you do not react, you are not disappearing, you are declaring mastery. But here is the secret: silence is not only about them, it is about you. Each time you resist the urge to break it, you teach yourself that your peace cannot be stolen. Each unanswered provocation is another brick in the fortress of your independence. You may feel the urge burning in your chest, the temptation to send that message to prove your point, to shout so that they finally understand. But ask yourself, if they could not hear your worth in your actions, what makes you think they will suddenly understand through your words? Words can be twisted, but silence cannot. It is pure, unassailable. It is the battlefield where you hold every advantage. They expect you to scream. They expect you to beg. They expect you to explain until you run out of breath. When none of that comes, when all they are met with is the quiet strength of your stillness, their confidence collapses. I want you to remember something the next time you feel the urge to react. Epictetus taught that what disturbs us is not the things themselves, but the opinions we attach to them. The insult, the manipulation, the bait they throw, it is nothing until you grant it meaning. And silence is your refusal to give it meaning. Silence says, this does not touch me. This does not define me. Picture it like a storm. They throw thunder, lightning, chaos at you, waiting for you to flinch. But you remain like a mountain, unmoved, unmoving. The storm rages around you, but it cannot move what is grounded in truth. Your silence is the mountain, and the more it holds, the smaller their storm becomes. Let me tell you something most people never realize. Your silence is not a retreat. It is not hiding. It is not cowardice. It is a declaration of strength that echoes louder than any defense could. It is you saying, I will not dance to your tune. I will not be your puppet. Your silence is a mirror, and in it they are forced to see their own weakness, their own desperation, their own fragility. That is why it terrifies them. When you practice silence, you shift the story. You stop being the character written by someone else and start being the author of your own life. They wanted to control the script, but you tore it from their hands the moment you refused to react. Do you see the beauty in that? What they believed was power over you was nothing more than borrowed energy from your reactions. Once you withdrew it, they were left with nothing. This is not easy work. It is discipline. It is patience. It is the art of sitting with your own emotions and not letting them rule you. But think of what is gained: peace of mind, dignity, control. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Every moment of silence is you realizing this truth. Every quiet choice is you living it. So the next time someone tries to bait you, when the text arrives, when the accusation flies, when the door slams, pause. Feel the urge rise. Then breathe. Say to yourself, if I react, I give them my power. If I stay silent, I keep it. And then choose silence. Not because you are weak, but because you have already won. The world will tell you that silence is absence, but the Stoics teach that silence is presence, the purest form of presence. It is presence with yourself, with your principles, with your freedom. And in that presence, no one else rules you. That is true freedom. That is why Epictetus was right. No man is free who is not master of himself. Your silence is not only your defense, it is your victory. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." 2,000 years later, his words still cut through the noise of human behavior. Because what drives people to despair is rarely what actually happens, it is what they fear might be happening. In silence, your silence becomes a spark that ignites that imagination into a wildfire. When you stop explaining, when you stop reaching out, when you do not offer closure or comfort, you leave them alone with the one voice they cannot silence, their own. They begin to ask questions they cannot answer. Has she moved on? Has he realized his worth? Have they finally woken up to the truth that they never needed me? And each question digs deeper, not into you, but into them. Every possibility carries a shadow that frightens them, because each possible answer points to the same reality: you are no longer under their control. That is why your silence is not weakness, it is strategy. They expected you to react. They expected you to return with explanations to justify yourself, to plead or to rage. But when nothing comes, when the familiar cycle is broken, their confidence begins to fracture. The self-assured mask they wore so proudly starts to slip. Their certainty dissolves into doubt, and doubt left unchecked spreads like a poison. You see people draw their confidence not from who they are, but from how others respond to them. As long as you are there reacting, defending, showing them they still matter, their pride stands tall. But remove yourself from the equation, and suddenly their strength looks fragile. Like a grand statue with cracks running through its foundation, it begins to crumble, not because you attacked it, but because you refuse to hold it up any longer. Seneca observed in his letters to Lucilius that much of human suffering is self-inflicted. He urged us to recognize that fear, anxiety, and pride are illusions created by the mind. Your silence forces them into this exact recognition, whether they want it or not. Without your words to shield them, they are left to face the silence that echoes their own insecurity. Think of it like a mirror. You hold it up without saying a word, and in it they do not see you, they see themselves. They see their mistakes, their arrogance, their fragile pride. And what terrifies them is not what you might do, but what your absence reveals. Every unanswered message becomes a reflection of their doubt. Every moment you stay quiet becomes proof that they never had the control they thought they did. This is why silence is so powerful. It is not passive. It is not avoidance. It is a deliberate act of strength, a disciplined choice. To walk away without explanation is to choose mystery over comfort, and mystery unsettles them. Certainty is easy. Even rejection provides an answer. But silence denies them both certainty and closure. It keeps them guessing, and it is in the guessing that their mind becomes their enemy. Imagine them lying awake at night, replaying the last words you spoke, wondering what they missed, questioning every decision. Their pride once looked unshakable, but now it trembles. Their confidence once looked indestructible, but now it wavers. And all of this happens not because you fought, not because you explained, but because you gave them nothing at all. Marcus Aurelius warned in Meditations, "Do not waste the remainder of your life worrying about others unless it is for the common good. It will deprive you of action." In other words, stop wasting your breath trying to make others see what they refuse to see. Stop feeding their pride with your explanations. The highest action is often inaction, the choice to withhold, to remain still, to focus instead on building your own strength. Silence then becomes a kind of battlefield where the strongest move is no move at all. It is the art of letting them collapse under the weight of their own imagination. The Stoics understood this deeply. The more you react to provocation, the more you reveal where your chains are attached. The less you respond, the more untouchable you become. But here is the part most people miss. Silence is not only for their benefit or their downfall, it is for yours. When you hold back your words, you train your mind. You remind yourself that you do not owe anyone an explanation for living according to your principles. You prove to yourself that your value does not rise or fall based on their recognition. Seneca called this the cultivation of ataraxia, a state of untroubled calm. And what better way to live than untouched by the chaos of someone else's pride? Consider how often in your own life your imagination has tormented you. Think of the times when you waited for a reply that never came, or when silence from someone else sent your mind racing in 1,000 directions. Did the reality ever match the suffering you put yourself through in those hours? Almost never. That is exactly what your silence does to them. It turns their imagination into a punishment they cannot escape. And the more disciplined you are in maintaining that silence, the heavier it grows. At first they might laugh, pretend not to notice, convince themselves they still hold the upper hand. But as days pass, as the silence stretches into weeks, The weight of not knowing begins to crush them. Doubt seeps into their pride. Fear cracks their confidence. What once looked unbreakable turns brittle, and you did not raise your voice once. This is the paradox of silence. It looks like nothing, but it does everything. It is absence that commands presence. It is emptiness that feels heavier than noise. It is retreat that becomes the ultimate advance. And above all, it is proof that you are in control, not of them, not of the outcome, but of yourself. And that according to every Stoic philosopher who ever wrote, is the only control that matters. So the next time you're tempted to break silence to explain yourself just to feel some momentary relief, remember Seneca's wisdom. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. The reality is simple, you owe them nothing. Their imagination will do the work for you. Let it. Do not rob them of the suffering they have created for themselves. Do not rob yourself of the strength that comes from discipline, because silence is not weakness. It is not fear. It is the most strategic move you can make. And while their pride unravels in the echo of your absence, you stand firm, untouched, free. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." He was not writing to inspire others. He was writing to himself in the solitude of his tent while leading armies at the edge of the empire, reminding himself of a truth that even emperors struggle to live by. Control the mind and you are free. Lose control of the mind and no throne, no wealth, no relationship will save you. This is why silence is such a powerful test of mastery. Anyone can lash out. Anyone can beg, explain, or try to bend the will of others with words. But it takes a different kind of strength to hold still when provoked, to refuse to dance when others pull the strings, to deny them the reaction they crave, and stand rooted in your own command. That is mastery. That is freedom. Think about it. Their entire strategy depends on your response. They poke, they prod, they insult, they withdraw, all to see which button they can press to make you move. And for a long time, perhaps, those buttons worked. An angry word, a desperate plea, a flood of explanations. Each one was proof that they still had influence. But what happens when the buttons no longer work? What happens when they push and nothing moves? When they try to manipulate and you remain unmoved, their power evaporates. Not because they lost it, but because you stopped handing it to them. This is what Marcus meant. The events outside, what they do, what they say, how they try to control these are not in your hands. They never were. What is in your hands is your response, your state of mind, the calm you can choose even in the middle of chaos. And when you live from that place, when you refuse to be a puppet to their strings, you stand in a freedom they cannot touch. There is a reason empires fall and powerful people collapse under the weight of their own impulses. History is full of rulers who had armies, wealth, and endless authority over others, yet were slaves to their own anger, their own pride, their own need to be validated. They could not sit in silence. They could not endure being misunderstood, and so they were never free. You may not wear a crown, but the same law applies. If you cannot control your reactions, you are not in control at all. Picture a calm sea. Above storms rage waves, crash winds howl. But deep beneath the surface, the waters remain still. That is the mind of a person who has embraced silence. The noise outside may be violent, but inside there is steadiness. And when others realize they cannot shake you, when their loudest storms cannot move your depths, they lose every tool they once had against you. It is easy to think silence is passive, that it means doing nothing. But what could be more active than mastery over yourself? Think of how difficult it is not to respond to an insult, how heavy the urge is to explain yourself when someone misunderstands you, how strong the temptation to defend your worth when it is questioned. And yet if you can endure that urge without bending, you are doing something profoundly powerful. You are breaking the chains that bind most people their entire lives. Marcus Aurelius lived surrounded by betrayal, war, and uncertainty. His journals, which we call meditations, are filled with reminders to himself to hold still, to remain unmoved by what others do. He wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." That is the essence of silence. When they attack you with noise, you revoke its power by refusing to let it into your mind. When they demand a reaction, you revoke their control by giving them nothing. And here lies a truth that surprises people. Silence is not for them. It is not even about teaching them a lesson. It is about teaching yourself. Each time you stay quiet, you prove to yourself that your peace is yours alone, that no one can reach inside and stir your thoughts unless you let them. You are not just winning against their manipulation, you are building strength within your own soul. Imagine living in such a way that nothing outside could shake you. Imagine what kind of power that is. To walk into a room where others gossip about you and remain unbothered. To see someone try to provoke you and remain calm. To endure rejection, insult, even betrayal without losing your center. That is not weakness. That is power of the highest kind. It is not the power to control others, it is the power to control yourself. And once you have it, nothing and no one can enslave you again. This is why the Stoics were feared by tyrants. You cannot threaten a man who has learned to master himself. You cannot manipulate someone who refuses to react. What can you do to the person who has already decided that they're worth their peace? Their life is not in your hands. You cannot bribe him because he needs nothing. You cannot scare him because he does not fear losing what you never had the power to give. You cannot shame him because his dignity is not yours to define. Your silence becomes proof that you are such a person. It is a signal to the world and to yourself that you are not desperate for anyone's validation. You are whole, complete, untouchable. Every time you resist the urge to react, you place another stone in the foundation of a fortress no one can breach. And inside that fortress is your true freedom. But let us be clear, this is not a call to hide, to avoid, or to run from confrontation. It is the opposite. It is a call to stand boldly in your truth, so boldly that you do not need to justify it with words. To walk away not because you are afraid, but because you are strong enough to choose peace over noise. Silence is not weakness, it is discipline. It is the discipline of the warrior who knows that swinging wildly only wastes energy, while stillness holds the true advantage. So the next time they push, the next time they try to bait you into a fight, remember Marcus's words. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Say it to yourself in the moment. Let it remind you that their noise belongs to them. Your mind belongs to you. And then stand still. Stay silent. Watch how quickly their confidence crumbles when they realize they can no longer touch you. Because that is the ultimate proof of freedom. Not shouting, not winning arguments, not proving your point. True freedom is when you no longer need to react at all. Epictetus once gave a challenge to his students. First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. He was teaching that respect cannot be demanded from the outside. It cannot be won through arguments or begging or endless explanations. True respect is earned in silence, in action, in the dignity of one who refuses to betray who they have chosen to be. Think about how often people chase respect in all the wrong ways. They argue, they shout, they twist themselves into knots to prove a point, hoping that by raising their voice they will raise their value. But what always happens? The louder they shout, the less weight their words carry. Respect evaporates not because they are wrong, but because they are desperate. And desperation never commands respect. Now picture someone who does the opposite. A person who refuses to be dragged into endless arguments, who does not plead, who does not explain. Instead, they walk away in silence, holding their head high. That silence speaks louder than any defense could, because silence tells the truth. I do not need to fight for my worth. My dignity is not up for negotiation. That is the moment when respect begins to grow, not because they demanded it, but because they showed through their composure that they were already complete. Epictetus understood this deeply. He himself had been a slave before becoming one of the greatest Stoic teachers. He had no wealth, no status, no army at his back, and yet he commanded the respect of emperors and philosophers alike. How not by shouting, not by begging, but by living in such a way that his silence carried authority. He became unpredictable, unbending, a man who could not be forced into anyone else's script. And unpredictability, when grounded in integrity, commands respect. People never respect what they can predict. If they know you will always argue back, always explain, always bend, when pressured, your value in their eyes collapses. But when you stay composed and untouchable, when you hold silence instead of scrambling for approval, you become a mystery. They do not know what you will do next. And mystery is powerful. It draws their attention, and with it, their respect. Respect is not won in the moment of noise. It is earned in the discipline of restraint. Imagine two leaders on the battlefield. One shouts, flails, makes promises he cannot keep. The other stands still, gives few words, and watches with calm eyes. Who do the soldiers follow? Who do they trust with their lives? Not the one who begs for respect, but the one who embodies it through silence and discipline. Your life is no different. When you withhold words, when you refuse to fight battles that do not elevate you, you force others to sit with themselves. They cannot twist your silence. They cannot debate your calm. They are left only with the echo of their own actions. And that echo can be deafening. It confronts them with their choices in a way your arguments never could. This is why silence is not weakness, it is dignity. And dignity cannot be faked. It shows itself in the pause, in the refusal to be dragged into the mud. Dignity stands apart. It is the quiet decision to remain whole when others want to break you into pieces. That is why silence earns respect. Not the kind of shallow respect that comes from fear or manipulation, but the kind of respect that lasts, the kind that makes even your enemies admit they did not bend. They did not break. Seneca once wrote to Lucilius, warning him against the need to explain himself constantly. He said, "Be content with the approval of your own conscience." That is the secret. Respect begins inside. When you approve of your own actions, when you know you have lived according to your principles, you no longer crave validation. And ironically, it is this very independence from validation that commands respect from others. Because people always sense when someone does not need them. Your silence is not empty. It is full of meaning. It tells the world, I know who I am. I do not need to prove it. And this quiet certainty unsettles those who rely on predictability, those who thought they could control you. They cannot fight your silence. They can fight your words, twist your arguments, mock your explanations, but they cannot fight what you refuse to give. Silence leaves them powerless. And it is in that powerlessness that respect begins to take root. They begin to see you differently, not as someone desperate to be heard, but as someone strong enough not to need the noise. That shift is profound. It changes the dynamic completely. Suddenly, you are no longer chasing. You are no longer trying to convince. You are standing firm, and in standing firm, you rise above. Epictetus urged his students to imagine who they wanted to be, and then act as though they were already that person. If you want respect, act as though you already have it. If you want dignity, carry yourself with it, even when no one else sees. That is the essence of silence. It is the act of living as if you already know your worth, because you do. And when you live that way, others cannot help but feel it. So the next time you feel the itch to defend yourself, to prove your value with words, stop. Ask yourself, does this raise my value or lower it? If it lowers it, do not say it. If it makes you look like you are chasing, cut it off. Let your silence do the heavy lifting. Let your dignity speak without sound. And watch how quickly respect follows. Because in the end, respect does not belong to those who demand it. It belongs to those who embody it. And nothing embodies respect more than the quiet discipline of silence. Seneca once wrote, "No man is free who is not master of himself." It is a line that seems simple on the surface, but it carries the weight of a lifetime. Because freedom is not about breaking chains around your wrists. It is about breaking the chains around your mind. And nothing demonstrates this mastery more clearly than silence. When you stop reacting, you change the game completely. Silence shifts the balance of power. It may not look like it at first. They still talk, they still test, they still send their words like arrows in your direction. But when those arrows fall to the ground because you refuse to pick them up, something happens. The power they thought they had over you slips through their fingers. Suddenly they are no longer the ones in control. They are waiting. They are wondering. They are replaying every detail, every word, every look, searching for answers that you refuse to give. Every unanswered message becomes a dagger of doubt. Every moment of silence is a weight pressing down on their pride. And the longer you remain still, the heavier that weight grows. They begin to ask questions they cannot answer. Why are you quiet? Did they finally move on? Did they realize they never needed me? Have I lost them forever? Their confidence, once so bold, begins to erode under the relentless uncertainty that silence creates. Seneca understood this human weakness. In his letters to Lucilius, he warned against depending on others for validation, for stability, for worth. He knew that to live as a slave to another's opinion was to live without freedom. When you hold your silence, you live out that truth. You demonstrate that you no longer need their approval, their attention, their reaction to feel whole. And once you no longer need them, the power is yours. Think of it like a game of tug-of-war. For as long as you pull, the rope stays tight and both sides remain locked in struggle. But what happens when you simply let go? They fall backward because all their strength depended on your resistance. That is silence. It is the letting go of a battle they thought they could trap you in forever. And when you release it, they collapse under the force of their own expectations. This is why silence terrifies those who seek control. They feed on your reactions. They thrive on your defenses. They need you to engage because engagement keeps the illusion alive. But silence cuts off their supply. It starves them of the energy they once stole from you. And in the emptiness that remains, doubt creeps in. Their mind begins to whisper, maybe I am losing them. Maybe I already have. The Stoics knew that true strength lies in indifference to what does not serve you. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself each morning that others may insult, betray, or provoke, but his own mind remained his. Epictetus told his students that you are not harmed by what others say or do, but by your interpretation of it. And Seneca went further, pointing out that the man who depends on another for his peace has already given away his freedom. Silence embodies all of these truths at once. In silence, you reclaim your power, not by force, not by confrontation, but by refusing to play the game. Imagine two gladiators entering the arena. One charges with fury, swinging wildly, desperate to strike. The other stands still, calm, sword lowered, waiting. The crowd grows restless. The first gladiator wastes his energy, tires, himself begins to doubt. The one who waits, the one who does not move until it matters, is the one who holds the true power. That is you when you choose silence. It is not about punishing them. It is about liberating yourself. Because every moment you stay silent is a declaration that you are no longer dependent on them for anything, not clarity, not closure, not validation. You are not dancing to their rhythm. You are writing your own. And in that independence lies the kind of power they can never take away. But silence is not easy. It requires discipline. It requires sitting with the discomfort of not responding, of not defending yourself, of not explaining. Yet this discomfort is precisely where your strength is built. Every time you resist the urge to break silence, you prove to yourself that you can master your own impulses. And mastery of the self is the only true mastery there is. Watch what happens when you embody this. At first they may laugh thinking you are weak, believing you will return. Then as days pass, they begin to wonder. Weeks pass, and their confidence begins to fracture. Each unanswered message, each unreturned call, becomes another reminder that the rope is no longer being pulled from your side. And eventually they realize that the script has changed forever. You are no longer the one waiting. They are. Seneca was right. Freedom belongs only to those who master themselves. And when you use silence as discipline, you take back the freedom you once gave away. No one can bait you. No one can force you into a reaction. No one can control the strings of your emotions, because the strings no longer exist. You cut them the moment you chose silence over noise. And here's the most important truth: you do not need them. You never did. The power was always yours, hidden beneath the layers of reaction, buried under the weight of needing to be heard. When you finally see that your value does not depend on their recognition, you stand taller, freer, untouchable. And in that moment, the silence you once feared becomes your crown. So the next time they wait for your reply, the next time they hover over their phone, wondering why you have not answered, the next time they grow restless with the silence you hold. Remember this: each second of quiet is not emptiness. It is power. It is proof that you are free. And nothing terrifies them more than realizing that you no longer belong to them at all. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." He was not speaking to crowds nor trying to impress others. He was alone, writing in the quiet hours of the night, reminding himself that true joy does not come from victories, possessions, or the approval of others, but from the discipline of the mind. And it is in silence that this discipline is forged. Silence is not merely the absence of sound. It is a space, a clearing of fertile ground, where the seeds of transformation take root. When you step back, when you refuse to chase, when you close the door on noise, you are not retreating. You are creating space for yourself. And in that space, something powerful happens. The mind, no longer consumed by defending itself or by explaining to others, turns inward. It strengthens, it sharpens, it rises. Think of silence as a training ground. While they remain caught in regret, circling the same thoughts, replaying old conversations, trying to guess what your silence means, you are already moving forward. They are trapped in the past. You are building a future. They remain bound by their own pride while you step into freedom. This is why silence is not just absence, it is evolution. It is the foundation of your rise. Marcus Aurelius faced betrayals, wars, and losses, yet he returned again and again to the same principle: the mind is everything. If the mind is clear, the man is unshakable. And what clears the mind more than silence? What gives you the strength to grow more than stepping away from the noise of those who would hold you down? Every day you choose silence, you give yourself the chance to rebuild stronger than before. Imagine a blacksmith forging a sword. The process is not loud chatter, not wasted words. It is heat, pressure, and silence between strikes. Each pause allows the metal to cool, to become what it is meant to be. That is you in your silence. You are forging yourself step by step, hour by hour, into someone they no longer recognize, someone they can no longer control. Your silence becomes the workshop of your evolution. It is where you train your body, feed your mind, refine your vision. While they are wondering, you are working. While they are doubting, you are creating. While they are shrinking, you are expanding. And one day they will see not the person who walked away in silence, but the stronger, freer, unshakable person who emerged because of it. Marcus warned that chasing after the opinions of others only wastes the short life we are given. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Silence is how you prove this realization. Each time you hold back, each time you choose not to explain or defend, you reclaim energy that once leaked away. And what you reclaim, you can now invest in your own growth. Do not underestimate the power of this exchange. Every hour you once spent arguing can now be spent learning. Every night you once lost in overthinking can now be used to rest, to recover, to plan. Every ounce of energy you once wasted in chasing is now invested in building. And that building compounds slowly, quietly, until one day you look around and realize you have become untouchable. This is why silence is freedom, because it returns to you the time, the energy, and the dignity that was once spent on others. And when you redirect all of that toward yourself, you rise. Not in anger, not in vengeance, but in growth. And that rise is what they never expected. They thought your silence would weaken you. They thought your absence would break you. But instead it became the very ground on which you built your new strength. Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." How much of life is wasted in noise? How much in endless arguments, in explanations, in chasing silence cuts away the waste? It gives you back your life. And when you live with that focus, you evolve beyond them, beyond the old version of yourself into someone who lives fully without being pulled back by the noise of others. Picture it clearly. They are still there, locked in their doubts, waiting for your reaction, replaying what they lost. Meanwhile, you are rising. You are reading, learning, creating, training. You are building a life that does not orbit around them. And every day of silence is another day of growth. They are standing still. You are moving forward. And nothing terrifies them more than realizing that your silence is not emptiness, it is progress. This is why silence is not just a strategy for the moment. It is the ground on which transformation happens. It is the soil where the roots of strength grow. It is the air where clarity breathes. It is the fire where discipline is forged. It is the water where peace flows. Silence contains everything if you are willing to step into it. Marcus Aurelius found strength in silence not because he was running from the world, but because he was training himself to be greater within it. You too can use silence this way, not as punishment, not as revenge, but as the sacred space where your life is rebuilt. Each day you choose silence, you choose yourself. And that choice repeated creates an evolution no one can stop. So hold your silence. Use it. Let it be the shield that protects you from noise and the ground where you grow stronger. While they are trapped in regret, let your silence be the proof that you are not only free, you are rising. Epictetus once taught men are disturbed, not by things, but by the view which they take of them. The weight we feel does not come from reality itself, but from the meaning we attach to it. And nowhere is this more visible than in the way people react to silence. Because when you choose silence, you do not strike them with words or deeds, you hand them back their own reflection. And that is what terrifies them most. When you remain quiet, they are left alone with themselves. No reassurance, no comfort, no explanations to soften the blow. Just their own mind echoing back their mistakes, their arrogance, their weakness. Silence becomes a mirror, and in that mirror they cannot hide. Every word they spoke, every choice they made, every act they used to control you, now stands naked before them. And the longer you withhold your response, the clearer that mirror becomes. Think of the power in this. Every unanswered message is not merely ignored, it becomes a seed of doubt planted in their mind. Each time they look at their phone, and see no reply. Each time they wonder why the silence continues, their confidence erodes. They begin to question themselves in ways they never did before. Was it my fault? Did I push too far? Did I destroy something I thought I controlled? The silence does not give them answers. It forces them to confront the questions they would rather avoid. Epictetus knew that human beings will do almost anything to escape themselves. We distract, we chase, we argue, we blame. Silence removes those distractions. It leaves them nowhere to run, and in that stillness, the truth is unavoidable. They are not as strong as they thought, not as clever, not as untouchable. They must face the reality of who they are without the buffer of your reaction. This is why silence is not weakness. It is confrontation at the deepest level. Not confrontation with you, but with themselves. Imagine a courtroom with no judge, no jury, no defense. Only the accused left alone with the evidence of their guilt. That is what your silence creates. It turns their own mind into the judge, the prosecutor, and the executioner, and they cannot escape the sentence it delivers. Consider how different this is from shouting, arguing, or defending yourself. When you fight back, you give them something to resist. You give them a reason to justify their behavior. They can twist your words, they can counter your arguments, they can blame you for their guilt. But silence offers no such escape. It leaves them with nothing but themselves. And most people cannot stand being left alone with themselves. Epictetus urged his students to remember that the world outside is not what enslaves us. It is our interpretation of it. In silence, you withdraw the script they relied on. You stop feeding them with your words, and suddenly they are forced to write the script themselves. But the story their mind writes is darker than anything you could ever say. They replay their mistakes, exaggerate your absence, torment themselves with endless what-ifs. They suffer not from reality, but from their view of reality, and that is a suffering silence magnifies. There is a reason silence has always been considered one of the most powerful forms of discipline. Monks, philosophers, warriors, they all practice silence, not as weakness, but as mastery. Because in silence you hear what words cannot say. In silence you see truths that noise conceals. And when you give silence to those who wronged you, you force them to hear the voice inside themselves that they have been drowning out. Think of someone who mistreated you, who expected you to argue, to plead, to chase. What would hurt them more, your anger or your absence, your shouting or your silence? The answer is always the same. Anger can be dismissed. Absence cannot. Silence is unforgettable because it cannot be explained away. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it." That is what happens when you fall silent. They are not disturbed by you, but by their judgment of what your silence means. And because they cannot know for certain, their imagination punishes them more than any words you could have spoken. Your silence becomes a mirror, and in that mirror, they see not you, but the truth of themselves. They see their insecurity. They see their failures. They see that without your response, they have no control. And control is all they ever wanted. This is why silence is not just a strategy, it is justice. You do not have to condemn them. Their own thoughts will do it for you. You do not have to seek revenge. Their imagination will be their punishment. You do not have to prove their wrongs. Your absence makes them undeniable. And here is the most important part. Your silence does not just haunt them, it liberates you. It frees you from the burden of explaining yourself to someone who never wanted to understand. It frees you from the exhausting cycle of reaction and justification. It frees you to live, to grow, to focus on building yourself instead of managing them. While they wrestle with their reflection, you walk away lighter, freer, unbothered. Epictetus was right. Men are disturbed not by things but by their opinions of them. When you go silent, you hand them back their own opinion. You hand them back their own judgment, and you leave them with the only enemy they cannot defeat themselves. So hold your silence. Let them face it. Let them sit in it. Every unanswered word, every unreturned call, every pause that stretches into another day is not just absence, it is truth. And in that truth, they will find no comfort, no escape, no control, because silence is the mirror that never lies. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." He was reminding himself not to drown in endless debates, not to waste his life proving what virtue looks like to others, but to live it quietly, powerfully through his own actions. And this is exactly what your silence does. It is your declaration, your refusal to waste your life convincing people who do not want to be convinced. Every time you remain silent, instead of defending yourself, you are saying, "I will not argue about my worth. I will embody it." You are announcing without words that you no longer tolerate disrespect, half-hearted effort, or anyone who treats you as if your value must be earned through explanation. Silence in this way is not emptiness. It is a statement of self-respect, of independence, of strength. When you stop reacting, when you refuse to beg for understanding, you affirm something powerful, that your worth is not dependent on their recognition. You do not rise or fall based on whether they approve. You do not shatter because they withhold their validation. You are whole with or without them, and that truth is far more devastating to them than any words you could ever speak. Marcus Aurelius lived his entire life under scrutiny. As emperor, every decision he made was judged by senators, soldiers, rivals, and enemies. He could have wasted his days explaining himself, justifying his actions, defending his choices. But he refused. He wrote in his journals to remind himself that his responsibility was not to convince the world of his virtue, it was to live it. And that is what you are doing when you choose silence. You are living your value instead of begging for it to be seen. Think about it. The person who argues, who defends, who explains, communicates one thing: "I need you to understand me." But the person who stays quiet communicates something far stronger: "I do not need you to." Silence is dignity. It is independence. It is the purest sign that your life no longer orbits around their judgment. Every unanswered message is not avoidance, it is a boundary. Every refusal to defend yourself is not weakness, it is strength. And each time you hold your silence, you are setting a new standard, not just for them, but for yourself. You are telling the world, "This is how I will be treated. This is the respect I require. This is the value I place on myself." And once you live by that standard, others have no choice but to meet it or be left behind. Seneca once said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." Your silence is that friction. It is the test that reveals what you are made of. Will you lower your value to be heard, or will you remain still confident in the truth that your worth does not need to be proven? Every time you choose silence, you pass the test. You choose to polish yourself rather than fight to be polished by someone else's approval. Imagine a scale of worth. On one side, their opinion, on the other, your self-respect. Each time you defend yourself, you place weight on their side, telling them their opinion matters more than your truth. But each time you stay silent, you shift the weight back where it belongs. You tell them, "My value rests here with me, not with you." And that balance cannot be broken. The Stoics understood that life is short. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "Do not waste what remains of your life in speculation about others. Such things make you forget to watch what is happening inside your own mind." Silence protects you from this waste. It shields you from being pulled into endless cycles of trying to prove your goodness to people who are not listening. Instead, it turns your focus inward toward building the life and the character that actually matter. And here lies the great paradox: the less you seek respect, the more it comes. People may not admit it, but they respect the one who does not chase, who does not bend, who does not need them. Silence is unpredictable, and unpredictability commands attention. They cannot fight it. They cannot twist it. They can only sit with the echo of their own behavior, confronted by the reality that you will not lower yourself for them. Your silence is not punishment, it is a standard. It sets the rules of engagement. It tells them, and it tells yourself what you will and will not accept. And once you have established that rule, your life changes. Because no longer do you waste energy defending yourself. No longer do you burn hours trying to explain. You live, you build, you grow, you become. Marcus Aurelius urged himself never to argue about being a good man, but simply to be one. That is what you are doing with your silence. You are choosing to live your worth, to embody your dignity, to rise without seeking permission. And in that choice, you become untouchable. So the next time you feel the urge to break silence, to defend yourself, to prove your worth to someone who has never valued it, remember this: every word you spend is a gift of energy. If they do not deserve that energy, why give it? Hold your silence instead. Let it speak for you. Let it set the standard. Let it prove without argument that your worth is undeniable, because silence is not emptiness. It is a crown. And when you wear it, you no longer waste your life convincing others of what you already know. You live it, and that is enough. Silence does not end when the moment passes. It lingers. Long after the words have faded, long after the arguments have been forgotten, silence remains in the mind, like an echo that refuses to die. And this is where its greatest power lies, not in the moment of withholding, but in the mark it leaves behind. Every time they remember you, what comes back is not your shouting, not your explanations, not even your anger. What returns is the silence, the unanswered question, the space they could not fill, the absence that spoke louder than presence ever could. That silence becomes a ghost in their memory, haunting them not with words, but with the fact that no words were ever given. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." Silence is your way of beginning to live again. Because in withholding words, you are not clinging to the old story, you are stepping into a new one. You are saying, my life does not revolve around convincing you. My life is not an endless courtroom where I plead for my worth. My life is mine. And that choice echoes not just in the present moment, but in every memory they carry of you. They will search for answers. They will replay the last conversation, the last look, the last chance to hear you speak. But the truth they cannot outrun is that silence has no explanation. They cannot twist it. They cannot argue with it. They cannot resolve it. And that unresolved silence becomes a weight, a mark, a legacy that lingers in their conscience long after you have moved on. Seneca once wrote in his letters to Lucilius, "What need is there to weep over parts of life? The whole of it calls for tears." He understood that life is filled with regrets, but the deepest regrets are often not caused by what happened, but by what was left unsaid. Your silence carves such a space in their memory. It forces them to live with the regret of not having closure, of not having the final word, of never knowing if they were wrong or if you simply rose beyond them. And this is what transforms silence from strategy into legacy. A strategy ends when the game is over. A legacy remains when the players have left the field. Your silence is not just a tactic you used in the moment, it is the imprint of your strength that endures in their mind. It brands you as someone they could not bend, could not control, could not reduce to their level. And that memory, that recognition is what lasts. Think of the stories history remembers. It is not the noise of petty arguments that endures. It is the quiet strength of those who refuse to be moved. Socrates standing silently before his judges, choosing not to plead for his life, but to accept death with dignity. Marcus Aurelius, writing his thoughts in private, never seeking applause, yet leaving behind a record of strength that still guides us 2,000 years later. Their silence became their legacy, and your silence can become yours. What terrifies them most is not that you left, but that you left without explaining. Because explanations provide comfort, even if painful. They tie a bow on the story, but silence leaves the story unfinished. It leaves them with a wound that never quite heals. Every time they think of you, they are forced to confront the void you left behind. And in that void, they find not closure, but themselves, their weakness, their mistakes, their pride. Epictetus taught, if anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what is said of you, but answer, he was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone. This is the essence of silence. To refuse to defend yourself, to refuse to waste your breath on those who never truly saw you, is to hold a power that extends far beyond the moment. It writes itself into memory as proof that you were above the game. And that proof becomes a legacy not only for them, but for you. Each time you resist the urge to react, you etch into your own mind the truth of who you are, someone unshakable, someone who cannot be defined by others, someone who knows their value without demanding it be recognized. Silence becomes the foundation upon which you build not just dignity, but identity. One day they will think back, and when they do, they will not remember you as someone who begged or pleaded. They will not remember you as someone who argued until the end. They will remember you as silence, and in that silence they will see the truth that you are beyond their control, beyond their games, beyond their reach. Your silence will outlive their pride. It will outlive their excuses. It will outlive their attempts to rewrite the story. Because silence cannot be rewritten. It stands as a mark in time that no one can alter. That is why silence is not only a strategy, it is a legacy. A lasting image of you as someone who rose above someone, who chose peace over noise, someone who lived with strength no one else could break. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself not to waste life in words, but to live in deeds. Your silence is the deed. It is the proof. It is the imprint you leave behind in the minds of others and, more importantly, in your own. Because while they remain haunted by it, you are freed by it. Freed from their control, freed from their judgment, freed to live, to grow, to become. And so when the story of this chapter is remembered, it will not be remembered in shouts or arguments. It will be remembered in the quiet weight of silence, the silence that declared your strength, the silence that proved your worth, the silence that became your lasting legacy. From the very beginning, it was silence that unsettled them. Not your anger, not your rejection, not even your absence. It was the silence that forced them to look inward, to face the reflection they had avoided. That silence stripped away the distractions, the noise, the games, and left them with themselves. And that was the one thing they were never prepared to confront. As the days unfolded, your silence did more than disturb. It dismantled. It tore apart the illusion of control they had built so carefully. It cracked their pride. It transformed confidence into doubt. It flipped the balance of power. Each stage revealed another truth, that the strength they thought they owned was never theirs, it was yours. And the moment you withdrew your reactions, you took it all back. At first they believed silence was weakness, that it meant retreat, that you had nothing left to say. But slowly, painfully, they discovered the opposite. Silence was your shield, your declaration, your weapon. It became the ground where your dignity stood firm, the foundation on which respect was built, the force that shifted power into your hands. Silence was never absence. It was presence of the highest order. And this is where the story reaches its crescendo. Because silence in the end is not just a strategy for relationships or a tool to unsettle others. It is the very essence of Stoic philosophy. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Epictetus taught his students, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." All three were pointing to the same truth, that freedom, strength, and dignity are found not in controlling others but in mastering yourself. Silence embodies this mastery. It is the practice of self-control made visible. It is the discipline of refusing to react to the storms outside. It is the proof that you are no longer swayed by the approval or disapproval of others. In silence, you become unshakable. You become free. This is the highest point of the journey, because silence has carried you through each trial. It has broken illusions, shattered their confidence, forced them to face themselves, and built in you an independence that cannot be stolen. Silence has not only changed the dynamic between you and them, it has changed you. It has returned you to yourself. And this is the ultimate purpose of Stoicism, not to win arguments, not to conquer others, but to conquer the only thing that truly belongs to you, your own mind. To be unmoved by what does not matter. To be unbroken by what you cannot control. To live with peace, with dignity, with freedom. Your silence is not just a tactic in a relationship. It is the practice of philosophy itself lived out in real time. Marcus Aurelius wrote that tranquility comes when we stop worrying about what others say and do and focus only on what is within us. Your silence is the embodiment of that tranquility. It is the moment you stop wasting yourself on noise and begin living in strength. Epictetus said that when someone provokes you, remember that it is your choice to be disturbed or not. Your silence proves you have chosen not to be disturbed. Seneca reminded us that dignity is not something given, but something lived. Your silence shows you have chosen to live it. So what began as their fear of silence, becomes your liberation. What began as their nightmare, your refusal to react, becomes your crown. What began as a tactic in the moment becomes a philosophy for life. Silence, once thought weakness, reveals itself as absolute power. And now the circle closes. From the moment they trembled at your silence through each stage where it dismantled their illusions, until this final truth, you stand where the Stoics stood. Free, unshakable, untouchable. Because silence has proven what nothing else could, that you are no longer ruled by them, nor by the world outside, nor even by your own impulses. You are ruled only by yourself. The greatest strength is not in noise, not in argument, not in control over others. It is in the ability to hold your peace, to stand still, while the world shakes, to remain whole in the face of storms. Silence is the proof of this strength, and the more you practice it, the more untouchable you become. So let this be the truth: you carry the silence that once frightened them has set you free. The silence that once unsettled them has rebuilt you. And the silence they once mistook for weakness has revealed itself as your ultimate mastery. You do not need their words. You do not need their approval. You do not need their understanding. You have your own mind, your own discipline, your own dignity, and nothing can take that from you unless you give it away. Remember this final truth: the more silent you become, the more unassailable you are. The more you master your silence, the more untouchable your strength. The more you refuse to be shaken, the more you rise above. Because in silence you have proven the ultimate Stoic principle: you are free. And nothing, not their fear, not their pride, not their games, can ever take that away. They once believed your silence was weakness. They thought it meant surrender, retreat, or defeat. But they were wrong. Your silence was never a sign of emptiness. It was proof of the greatest strength of all, the mastery of yourself. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Each time you chose silence instead of reaction, you lived this truth. You showed that your peace could not be stolen, that your dignity did not depend on the chaos around you. You proved that your inner fortress was stronger than any storm they could unleash. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." And that is exactly what your silence has done. It turned their imagination against them. They replayed every word, every moment, searching for answers you never gave. Their own mind became the tormentor while you remained calm, untouched, and free. Epictetus taught, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And your silence became the undeniable mark of this freedom. You no longer danced to their tune. You no longer allowed their games, their approval, or their rejection to bind you. In silence, you broke every chain. Every time you chose not to respond, you laid another stone in the fortress of your soul. Every day you stayed quiet, you reclaimed pieces of energy that had once been stolen from you. Your silence became both shield and weapon, protecting your peace while dismantling their illusion of control. And here's the final truth. The highest form of revenge is not in forcing them to see their mistakes. It is not in making them admit their guilt. The highest form of revenge is in becoming someone greater than you were before, stronger, freer, calmer. It is in living a life so grounded, so unshakable, that no one else can define it. So let this be your affirmation: I am untouchable because I have mastered myself. My silence is proof of my strength. My value cannot be denied because it does not depend on anyone else. And when you carry this truth forward, you will see silence was never weakness. It was always your power. If this message spoke to you, do one thing: carry it into your own life and share your story in the comments. Tell me the moment silence gave you strength. And if you want more Stoic lessons like this, subscribe now and watch the next video waiting here. It will take you even deeper into the power of self-mastery.